man prayed, and at first he thought that prayer was talking, but he became more and more quiet until in the end he realized that prayer was listening. With that quote from Soren Kierkegaard, Pete Greig begins his chapter on listening. We have been making our way through his model for prayer, Pete Greig's model for prayer in his book, How to Pray, a simple guide for normal people. And we've made our way through so that the P stood for pause, the R stood for rejoicing, the A was the ask, and then Y has been yielding, and listening is a part of that yielding and has to do with that idea that is shared in that quote that I opened with, that it becomes less about what we say to God and more about what we hear from God. And if we are to hear from God, then we need to cultivate the tool of listening. And so this time together this evening, or yes, for Wednesday evening prayer for today, I want to try to say less. So less of me talking and more of you actually having an opportunity to listen. So the first thing I want to do as we begin our time together is share with you a piece of music that Joyce Jaco recorded for us that was at the beginning of our recording for worship on Sunday. I want to place that in here. Some of you may have heard it on Sunday, and some of you may not have watched the virtual worship on Sunday, and so this may be your first time to hear it. But I want you to listen to this music and use it as a way to listen for the music, but also begin to allow yourself to listen for God and for what God is saying to you this evening as we spend this time together working on tools for listening for God. I like the way that we've been having music shared with us in worship these past couple of weeks. Joyce has played a couple of pieces that have transitioned us from the beginning of our virtual worship into the worship service itself. And then during in-person worship, Carolyn has provided music, the doxology, the Gloria, but also at times places where, for instance, after the sermon, before the prayers of the people, there is a space where there is just music. And because we're not singing in worship right now, that music is especially meaningful to us at those times. But it gives us a time without singing words to process what we've been hearing, to think about what we're experiencing, and to listen for what God is saying to us. In this chapter on listening, Greg talks about several ways that God may speak to us. So it's not an exhaustive list, but it's a way to begin to think about the ways that God speaks to us. We can hear God in the Bible. We can hear God in dreams and visions. We can hear God in counsel and common sense. We can hear God in personal reflection. And we can hear God in action. So in each of those instances, there's that opportunity to hear God speaking words, particularly to us, but always with the reminder that we have to be attending to God. We have to be listening. There's a bit here that I wanted to share with you before we go to the next listening opportunity in this time we're sharing together this evening. Greg has this sentence that I want to just lift out, this one sentence. Try to turn your thoughts, your questions, and even your distractions into prayers. I really wanted to pull that out because I liked the last part about distractions and turning your distractions into prayers. What I had done at the outset was I wanted to record several things around the lake today and share them with you as opportunities to listen. And so one place I really wanted to go was to this place where the geese gather, lots of them. And you'd be able just to hear mostly them and them in the water and them making the noises that they make. And instead, when I got there, I got all that, but I also got a person who was there mowing the entire area. So they were going to be there for a long time. So in this next minute video, you will have that idea of sometimes we have this place carved out that's going to be the place where we will be able to listen for God. But then something else comes along that we weren't anticipating, and it can be a distraction, but we can still listen. So we're going to listen for that now, and I want you to spend this next minute, it's a minute long, thinking about those times when you're trying to listen, but you're also distracted, but still try to focus on what God is saying to us in those times, and what that's like. For this next bit, this is in the area on hearing God and personal reflection, but I think it's sometimes important that just to re-emphasize again and again that God speaks to us in ordinary ways, in moments of stillness, in moments where we're actually doing something else and our attention is kind of somewhere else, but not entirely, and maybe things that we're not at the front of our minds right at that moment. It's easier for us actually to process them when we're not working so hard at it. And what Pete Greig says in this book is, in a similar way, once you've asked the Lord to speak to you about a particular thing, it's often a good idea to stop trying too hard to hear what God's saying and occupy yourself instead with the kind of activity that engages you enough to be absorbing, but not too much, so that your mind has a little space to wander. want you to spend the next 2 minutes imagining that you're on the bench that you're going to see and you're looking out at what's going on, and allow your mind the space to wander. And in that 2 minutes, look around, see what you see, listen for what you can hear, but let your mind wander and listen for what God is saying for you this evening. As we close this evening, we'll tell you that about every hour on the hour, the chapel, there are chimes that play, and there's a hymn that follows the ringing of the hour. So I have that to share with you as we close out tonight, and I will ask you to listen again for God in these next few moments and have that conversation with God in this time, asking for what it is that God is speaking to you about, and praying that God would give you a heart that wants to listen and ears that are open to listening and to expressing a willingness to act when we hear what it is God is asking us to do, who God might be asking us to be in touch with, the ways in which God may be speaking to us to live out our faith. And as this is playing, I'll also be putting up a closing prayer for you, a short prayer by Christina Rossetti that will serve as our closing of this time together. And so I turn this over now to your last, for this time together, time of listening.